Welcome back, everybody, to day 4 of Breaking Through Your Matrix Programming, aired from transCODES. My name is Jona, Bryndis, and
Jeff Casper.
And we are going to be your energy trainers and energy coaches here for today. Thank you so much for watching. We are airing this live, so even if you are watching the video later, please know that the reason why we do this live is to interact with you. And if you have any questions or comments, then please use the comment section. We will respond to you later. Okay. So yes, day 4, huh? We're getting into the nitty-gritty now. Yesterday we asked you to embrace every time your ego gets rubbed the wrong way. How did that go for you guys? What did you find out about yourself, or where did your energy go with this? This is sort of the central question here of today's energy lesson, energy training lesson that we want to share with you. And that is, what is it that creates this noise in us that makes it so difficult to hear our true inner voice? We talked about this yesterday. So where does our energy go when things go a little tricky? And this is an individual process, so not all of us will have the same experience here, but part of energy training is to become more aware of where, our emotions, our thoughts, our physical sensations, where our energy goes in a particular condition, because that helps us to discern. And discernment of our energies, of our perception, of our reality, of our understanding of truth is the big part here of dealing with fears, dealing with this inner noise. Yes. Thank you for coming back. I see some familiar names. This is wonderful. We really appreciate your contributions. We appreciate your questions and letting us know where you're from. Please smash the like button for every video. All right. If you like what you're seeing here, help us to spread these videos. We've received wonderful, wonderful emails, and I want to thank you all for your positive feedback. And we've also received some recurring questions. And one of these questions is the practical aspect of these energy lessons. And if you are new, or if this is the first time that you're watching any of these energy training videos, then I strongly recommend you to stay all the way to the end, because we get very, very practical here. So we take the problem apart, put it back together, and then we show you how to apply this in the physical, in the emotional, in the mental, spiritual, and energetic way. Wonderful. Awesome. Good to see you guys.
Yes, definitely.
All right, so where does your energy go when things get a little tricky, when it gets a little challenging? Well, for most of us, the answer is pretty simple. It goes into the place where our ego is located. Namely, oops, there's something I cannot handle. Oops, there's something that is uncomfortable. Oops, there's something that is uncertain. There's something unknown. So it is, in essence, the fear of the unknown that puts us into this place of having to resort to all these coping mechanisms, how we deal with things, how we understand ourselves, the self-image, as we talked about yesterday, how we see the world around us, and then obviously what we decide to do, what we choose to do, comes from that place. And that's the problem. Because there are a bunch of accumulated things and false perceptions, as we call them, that have led to your way of dealing with things. And not that there's anything wrong with, the way you perceive, your world or the way you deal with things. This is, of course, a subjective um, you know, assessment, how you see, how successful or how we define it, how congruent you are in your life, and basically how fulfilled you are. So we're equating fulfillment and congruence, with success. But we do know the mechanics really well that play a role in when a person is not able to actually access their highest potential, or is not able to access all the skills, or even just a perception that allows this person to truly discern, what real is, what this person's truth actually is. And today we want to talk to you about how you can identify those false perceptions, and really also how much you make yourself depend on those, and how many of your choices in your daily lives actually depend on sort of a temporary state that you have, that now sort of filters the way you see the options that you have and the way you see yourselves within all that. So let's talk about, like what creates this disconnection from our true self, from the safe space within ourselves where we have optimal access to our inner guidance, the noise, as we called it yesterday. What is it that makes it so difficult for us sometimes to have this clarity, that when you know that whatever it is that you're doing, or whatever it is that you are about to do, is working for you, is the right thing? Don't we all want to be there? Why is this so difficult to be in this place? And one of the reasons is the unknown that we talked about. So many of us begin to doubt themselves, or to question, that they can get there, wherever that place is, which we call alignment. So wherever we want to go, that's our alignment. Or that, we're not quite sure if this is actually true to us. So we talked about this in the last 3 days, how we can better discern what is true to us. And one of the key factors here that we mentioned is our needs. Mm-hmm. Our needs, and respectively our unmet needs that disconnect us. Because as soon as we are in a place where there's too much contradiction in us, too much inner fight, too much conflict, inner and outer conflict, too much ringing or needing something from the outside, remember what happens? We become incongruent, and we begin to externalize our power. We begin to seek on the outside. And that's when we lose connection with what we truly need, what we truly want, and where we truly want to go. Mm-hmm. So in conclusion, it's really a matter of our perception in the moment, what determines the clarity and also the confidence in us to move through with our intentions or with our purpose. And so pinning it down really to the fear of our ego that wants to have that sense of familiarity, because remember, the ego is directly linked to our autonomous nervous system. So it feels comfortable, it feels comfort in situations that are familiar. And unfortunately, that's also one of our biggest pitfalls, because familiar doesn't necessarily mean healthy. No matter how dysfunctional our circumstances are, if we grew up in such circumstances, or if we just experienced a lot of trauma or a lot of struggle in our lives, then unfortunately, this will feel familiar to our ego. And the way our ego will advise us will always be gearing towards what we already know. In other words, the continuing of our pain, of our fear. And that's the biggest issue here that we are encountering on our journey very early and pretty much every day.
Mm-hmm. And the issue with that too is that because it's from the ego, like the mind and the emotions, there will not be any new ways. That method, the mind and the emotions only do, and the ego only does what it knows. So it'll only take what it knows and try to create some form of coping that will keep us in the same spins. It cannot create new. That comes from inspiration, that comes from change, that comes from the things that Jona's talking about.
From the embracing
Yes.
that we asked you
Yes.
yesterday. And we also mentioned yesterday how pain is related to the past and fear is related to the future.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think back on day 2, we talked about ego control. The more we try to control, the more we will be pulled into the fear. Mm-hmm. And so there is a connection between control and fear, because the more we think we have to tweak things or justify things or get things into, sort of make our own reality, the more fear we will feel and the more inadequacy we will feel from within. So the point that we're trying to make here is that the way we perceive ourselves, our ability, our choices, and, our current state have a lot to do with where our energy goes or where it basically gravitates towards in a given moment. And I want to share one of those infographics with you once more. Yes, it's going to cover up our faces, but it helps to visualize this. Every emotion that we have, and just as a reminder here, all our emotions, all our physical sensations, all our thoughts and beliefs, they just are. Okay, they just are. They're not positive or negative. It is our ego that contextualizes certain states with pain, with fear, with, control, whatever, we have experienced in the past. And that is then also the limitation of our perception, namely that we can really only put it into context with what we already know. And as we just talked about, that's what our ego prefers. Mm-hmm. If you look at the white column description at the bottom, basically what we're saying is that how you feel like and where your energy goes, meaning what you want to do, like your sort of primary reaction, mm-hmm. okay, and how you see yourselves and how you see the world are intrinsically interconnected with another. Mm-hmm. And in order to become more aware of where your energy is at a certain moment, it can help to look at this chart. There's a lot of people who have this printed out and on their fridges just to learn how, to train their energy to be in a bit more of an observing state rather mm-hmm. than just experiencing the emotions of a certain state. Because as we talked about yesterday, as soon as we get pulled into the emotion of something or into the thinkingness of our energetic state, then it is pretty much clear that our perception becomes limited or filtered by this energetic state. Mm-hmm. And we will talk about this more here in the future. I just wanted to give you a little bit of an idea of how we work with these things and how we teach things. Okay, so there's always a way for you to work on these things on your own in self-guidance. This is the big thing about the Sacred Self-Healing course that is basically divided in into these 21 lessons plus a few extra lessons that become important at a very late stage of our journey. Mm-hmm. So once you understand that your fears are directly linked to your energetic states, then you become empowered to face them. You become empowered to deal with them instead of just coping with them, just trying to get through, just to survive them. That's the big empowerment, is feeling that you have a tool to deal with things instead of needing to resort to your ego's coping. So what are some of these things that can trigger our fear and that can, make it so difficult for us to escape from that? One, of course, we talked about is, are the transgressions in the past, and the mistakes that we've done in the past and the pain that we've experienced in the past. And of course, the whole idea, that if I make a mistake, then I may lose something, or, the ego literally, as we mentioned yesterday, goes as far as like, I'm going to die. Okay, subjectively, it's going to feel that way. So the fear that we are up against here is not just sort of a made-up fear. This is a true fear, but it is one that comes from the reactivity of our ego. And for all of us, this is, for each and every one of us, this is linked to our past experiences. So in order to move past this, you have to understand that your perception in the past was most likely filtered, was most likely not based on truth. Mm-hmm. And a way to feel this a little better is if you think of yourself like maybe as a 4-year-old, and the way some of you may be able to recall this, how did you see the world back then? And this is how you contextualized your experiences, right? And now as an adult, you look back and you can laugh about this, right? Because of course, what does a 4-year-old know? How large is the perception of a 4-year-old? You have a much broader bandwidth today. Mm-hmm. And this is a big healing tool for you to understand this and to look at the past with the benefit of the doubt, with the benefit of knowing that you cannot really judge yourself or criticize yourself for something that you couldn't see in the past. So as your perception becomes more refined, and as you change this paradigm of seeing yourselves from internal, from within rather than from the outside through external sources, you begin to see how limited your perception was. And there's an innocence in this, and I want to remind you guys that no matter how much you enjoy beating yourself up over your past, in order to move on, you've got to forgive yourself for that. You've got to see, that there's a part in you that has developed to cope with things that is not necessarily the true part of you, the true self. And that's why we have such a hard time reconnecting with all our true needs and true perception and true purpose, because we've identified with that false part of us, the false perception, the false goals, the false needs.
Right. And if you also just look at it from a viewpoint of what judgment really is, you can look at it and see if your 4-year-old or 5-year-old or whatever age you can feel it at could have the perception that you have now as a full-grown adult. You could see how you could have changed it. You could see how you had more options. So by understanding that judgment, by letting it go, you can say things like, if I would have known better, I could have done differently. Because at that stage, you couldn't have. So a lot of times with judgment, besides forgiving, it's just accepting that as humans, we have limitations.
And it's also important to understand the whole thing here in context with, how we approach things in the past. Mm-hmm. All right. So we're talking about matrix programming here, and we've illuminated the connection between our ego's programming and some of the collective programming that comes in from the outside. So what does look at everything from the ego's perspective. What would you choose as an ego, so to speak? Would you choose to conform, to what the outside world displays to you? Or would you choose a pathway, that makes you, brings you into this constant state of conflict and struggle with your outside world? Yeah, granted, there's going to be a place where you may actually go into conflict or contradiction or rebellion with the outside world on purpose, okay, because you've had enough and you are going against it. But from an energetic point of view, this is really just another variation of it. So when we rebel against something, we are actually energizing it still. And so the best way to overcome some of these limitations through our ego's perception and the expression of that, which is the fear, is to have this understanding for yourself that it is okay, that based on what you knew, what you understood, what you could see in the past, that this was the only choice you had. But now that you are working on liberating yourself from these collective and also personal limitations, you will experience a broadening of your bandwidth, okay? You'll begin to see the larger picture. And now, you can see how your limitations in the past created all these unhealthy attachments. So yesterday we had a good question here, and that was, leading sort of what is the difference between a healthy and an unhealthy attachment. Obviously, some things in our lives we choose to limit us, like say having children, right? I mean, it's obvious that becoming a parent and having children will limit some of your choices. I mean, you can't really go on vacation whenever you want to, or, you have to work at different times, or you have to come up with more money. Those are all limitations, but it's one that you choose because it is true to you, or for most of us, that is. So, when you know that this is true to you, then you make choices based on your truth. And this is what we want to reinforce in you today and empower you to do, is to get past your fears by questioning your truth and forgiving you for your past, that you weren't able to see your truth in the past. So let's just put all this behind us and assume that within this new paradigm of understanding yourself as an energetic being, where nothing happens out of coincidence, that the solutions or the skills or the tools that you need to get over this next challenge, that they are already in you. And to reprogram ourselves to trust in that. By being in our center, or continuing to focus on our center, from the external to the internal, but also by questioning some of the things that we have believed in the past. So let's look at the practical implementation of this in these different layers of our being. Okay, so physically, how can we implement this physically this week? I would recommend you to create a safe space in the physical, to create a place around you, in your house, in your apartment, in your bedroom, wherever that is, preferably not in your car. A lot of people have safe space in their car, and that's okay, but that cannot be your route. All right, so car is okay, but you need to have a home base. All right, so this can be a tiny little corner, in your bedroom. It doesn't have to be in a whole entire room. It can also be your garden. If you live in a climate zone where you can be out in your garden all year round, then you can create a safe space there as well. But we want you to really focus on creating a safe space in your physical, right? A place that you can go to recoup and to gain clarity.
Even to go into contemplation, it creates a really cool space. If you keep that up, that the energy of that space will grow, and it'll actually continue along with you on the journey. So it'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Emotionally, we talked about this quite a bit here today, because this is a big part of this lesson, is to go into forgiveness and to see the innocence in us. And it does help to connect with your past self, if you will, kind of like with the notion of looking at a child, looking at a more immature version of yourself without judgment, to just accept that, what you knew yesterday is different from what you know today. And chances are, especially if you are following these energy training lessons, that what you're seeing today is much broader than what you saw yesterday. Okay, so forgiveness and compassion for yourself are very needed here at this stage of your journey. And especially also in context with the cycle that we talked about. So if you find yourself relapsing here, whatever, your purpose or your goals are, then please give yourself a soft hi, like forgive yourself, say, okay, that's all just programmed stuff in me, and I accept that, and I get back on the horse. Every day is a new day. All right.
And then alignment will actually increase that trust that we're talking about and actually bring it forward a lot of courage to keep going. So definitely keep going with that.
Yeah. Mentally, the implementation of what we talked about here in terms of overcoming your fear is a bit of a discipline that you'll have to practice with yourself, and that is questioning your perception, not so much questioning yourself. We don't want you to question yourself. This is part of the past. We want you to question your perception. And, like you have to practice that a little bit. Many of us here that have been on this journey for a long, long time know that this is something that will reoccur practically on a daily level. It's like, is what I'm seeing right now, is this actually true, or is this limited by a certain ego reaction, such as fear or pain or any of the other energetic states that we recommended you guys to look at. Behaviorally, and this is now really important. First of all, it's not just you who has these issues, right? You can see that, right?
No, it's just us.
People around you have the same issue, except for that they have absolutely no ways to contextualize this. And so you will, of course, see this in others. You'll see this in others very clearly when they become super, super incongruent and when they do things that are kind of fake. All right, this is what it will feel to you. You will feel this in others as fakeness. Now, for the implementation on your own journey, I want you to go exactly there with yourself. Catch yourself being incongruent in your behaviors in regards to others. When others ask you for a favor and you're in the middle of a big crisis yourself, and then don't volunteer. Don't do what violates your own needs.
And if you find that you're already in it and you're violating the needs or what you want to do, feel out what it is that makes you go there. What is it you think you need? What is it that you think you need from others? And that will create some of those, you'll be able to feel some of those triggers that we talked about in the sheet that Jona gave yesterday.
And also the payoff that you get out of staying there, okay? But we get to that much later.
Right.
However, at this point, I want you to catch these moments when you're actually violating your own needs. With understanding yourselves as an energetic being, you've got to realize that every time you feel like, oh, I need some sleep, or I mean, even if you can't qualify your needs in a given moment, the only way, to make sure that you are congruent is to go back into your heart and ask yourself, how do I truly feel about this right now? Or how do I truly feel right now? Is there anything I can do right now for myself to cover my needs? Because if you can't really build this confidence there, then you will continue to make yourself dependent on outside validations, or you'll make yourself dependent on others covering your need. And we'll talk about this later, how that creates very unhealthy attachments and relationship patterns. All right. So for now, I just want you to question that. And on a spiritual level, we're getting into this place now where we're actively removing this noise, okay? The noise that makes it so, or the clouds that make it so difficult for you to actually connect with it. And I really want you to go into this place of active communication. This is not just a one-way street, higher guidance or inner guidance. Go in and really, use what we've taught you the last 3 days. Go into your heart, breathe through your heart, and then, begin to communicate within. It's okay to talk to yourself. You may not want to do this in public, but it's okay. It's okay to really go into this place of turning down the noise and increasing your true inner voice. And a way to motivate this and also to stimulate the neuroplasticity and building new neural pathways is to go into active communication with yourself. Not in the sense of the critical inner voice, but in the sense of like really going in there and I say, hey, how are you feeling today? Ooh, is this true what you're saying there? Ooh, is this really what you need? Or is there something else that you need, to go into this two-way street with yourself?
Or even giving yourself a break. I give myself a break for the past. I give myself a break for looking at this way, etc. So you begin to break down the negative programming that's there.
Yes. And with that, on an energetic level, we're trying to give you the tools here to reprogram yourselves by catching any type of incongruence. Any type of incongruence. And when you catch yourself, then don't beat yourself up, but go into like, okay, I'm working on this. I'm in the process of doing this. Remember, it's a circle. It's a spiral. It's not like a ladder or a linear way of getting there. So go into this. I'm working on this. I'm making progress, bit by bit, baby steps, one baby step at a time.
And every piece that you integrate, every piece that you heal that is hurt, that is in pain, that is in the darkness, as sometimes is said, you get closer to the truer you. So look at every piece that comes forward as an opportunity to get closer to the real you.
Yes.
It really helps.
And your homework for tomorrow is going to be to write a letter to yourself, to your past self, coming from today's perspective, and basically apologizing to yourself for being so harsh, so critical, and so judgmental with yourself over your past. I'm curious how that's going to go for you. And as always, we want to put the energy training sessions that we offer here at transCODES into context with this. So one remote energy session that works really well with this lesson is the heart clearing. The heart clearing is a guided training session, which means we go into this deeper connective state with you together. And it's a recorded energy process. And while you're going in there, we're observing your energetic mechanics and things that go on in your energy field and reflect on it afterwards. Any questions? All right, then we will let you go for today. Thank you so much
thank you, everybody,
for watching. I can't wait to hear how writing an apology letter to yourself, how that worked out. Don't forget to state your new intentions. All right, and even if you don't know exactly where this is going to go, just write down, my intention is to get better every day, to increase my perception every day, to increase my inner connection every day. Remember, you have the tools to do this already in you. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.